Then, he put the knife into Muff Potter's hand and sat down. After a few minutes, Muff Potter began to stir and opened his eyes. He asked Joe what had happened. Joe replied, "This is bad, Muff." Muff looked at the doctor's lifeless body, and then at the knife in his hand. He asked, "Did I kill him?" His face turned pale, and the knife slipped from his hand. Muff Potter said, "It's the whiskey, Joe. I usually don't fight with knives. Why did I drink so much whiskey tonight? I don't remember anything." Joe comforted Muff and assured him that he wouldn't tell anyone. He urged Muff to leave quickly, and Muff followed his advice. Joe watched him for a moment, then carefully placed the knife next to the doctor's body before leaving the graveyard himself. The following day, the sheriff's men discovered the doctor's body in the graveyard, along with Muff Potter's knife. That night, Muff came to the graveyard to retrieve his knife, but the sheriff's men were already there. They took Muff to the small jail in St. Petersburg, where he awaited his trial for 4 weeks. Tom and Huck couldn't forget that fateful night in the graveyard. They were filled with worry and fear. Tom wondered aloud, "What are we going to do?" Muff Potter didn't kill the doctor. Joe did it, and we saw it. Huck agreed with Tom, saying, "I know, but what can we do? We can't tell anyone. I'm afraid of Joe. He's dangerous, and he's a killer." Tom understood Huck's fear and thought for a moment. He then said, "I'm sorry for Muff Potter. But you're right, Huck. We can't tell anyone about Joe." The summer holidays arrived, and with no school to distract him, Tom couldn't escape thoughts of Muff Potter and Joe. At night, he would lie in bed, haunted by Joe's face in the darkness, making it difficult to sleep. But he couldn't share his worries with anyone. One scorching summer day, Tom and Joe Harper were by the Mississippi River, watching the boats, fishing, and chatting. Suddenly, Tom had an idea. He suggested, "Let's get away from here. Let's go on an adventure, somewhere exciting." Joe was intrigued and asked, "Where and what do you have in mind?" Tom replied with excitement, "I know, Joe. Let's run away. Let's go live on Jackson's Island. We can sleep under the trees." Jackson's Island was located in the Mississippi River. It's the perfect escape for 2 boys seeking adventure. Tom suggested inviting Huck Finn to join them. He emphasized the importance of secrecy, saying, "But don't tell your mother or father or anyone. Go home, gather some food, and meet me here at midnight." That night, 3 boys, Tom, Joe, and Huck, set out in a small boat, heading down the river to Jackson's Island. They had brought bread, meat, and Huck had his pipe. Upon reaching the island, they carried their supplies ashore and made a fire under a large, old tree. They cooked some meat over the fire, and the taste was heavenly, the best dinner in the world. Soon, they stopped talking, their eyes grew heavy, and they fell asleep. The next morning, Tom woke up with the sun shining on him, a big grin on his face. Huck and Joe soon woke up too, and the 3 boys dashed down to the river to swim. After that, they went fishing and caught about 6 big fish for their breakfast. They cooked the fish over their fire and devoured them, as they were all very hungry. Joe happily declared, That was a wonderful breakfast. After breakfast, they explored the island, swam some more, chatted, fished, swam again, and finally returned to their fire in the afternoon. While they were on the island, Tom suddenly looked up and said, "Listen, can you hear boats?" They all listened, then rushed across the island to get a view of the river. There, they saw 20 or more boats on the water. It seemed like every boat in St. Petersburg was out. Joe asked, "What are they doing?" Huck replied, "I think they're looking for a dead body. They did the same thing last summer when Bill Turner fell into the river and drowned." Curious, Joe inquired, "Who do you think is dead?" Tom suddenly realized, "I know who's dead. It's us. They're looking for us." He thought it was fantastic. "We're famous," he told his friends. "Everyone in St. Petersburg is talking about us, and they all feel sorry for us." Night fell, and the boys went to sleep, but Tom couldn't rest. By morning, he was gone. When Joe and Huck woke up, they panicked and asked, "Where's Tom?" But then they spotted him swimming back to the island. At breakfast, Tom explained his absence. "I went home last night," he said, "and listened at the window. Joe, your mother was there, and she and Aunt Polly cried and cried. I overheard some very interesting things. On Sunday, there's going to be a big funeral at the church for us." Then Tom revealed his wonderful idea, which made Huck and Joe laugh. It was indeed a remarkable plan. That night, the boys cooked more fish, and after dinner, Huck took out his pipe and began to smoke. Tom asked, "Can we smoke too?" He wanted to learn, so Huck made pipes for Tom and Joe. The three boys sat around and smoked. Tom was excited, saying, "Hey, I like smoking. It's easy." Joe shared Tom's enthusiasm, stating, "It's nothing. I'm going to smoke every day." However, after about 10 minutes, Tom and Joe became quieter and quieter, and their faces turned an interesting shade. Tom suddenly decided, "I'm going for a little walk now." And he carefully got up and walked away into the trees. Joe, worried, said, "Wait." But Tom didn't listen. An hour later, the two boys returned, and they didn't touch their pipes again. On Sunday morning, there were no happy faces in St. Petersburg. Aunt Polly, Joe's parents, and all the boys' friends were in the church. The minister spoke kind words about the three boys, and their families wept. Everybody in the church cried. And little Becky Thatcher, especially, didn't stop crying for a second. There was a faint noise at the back of the church, but at first, nobody paid it much attention. Then the minister